What is up, guys? Welcome back to Bald Father Bets. It has been a long time since we made a post. It's been a long time since we came at you guys, but we are getting ready. We are getting geared up here for football season. A few housekeeping things first. No, I do not do NFL preseason picks. I've had that question asked a couple of times. Time is the main thing. Football season is essentially 7 months long. The amount of time it takes to intelligently make picks against the spread for both college and NFL, I don't want to expand that out a whole other month and have to do NFL preseason picks and learn backups to backups and all that stuff, and how long is a coach going to play his starters. It's just, there's too many variables in it that just aren't my thing. If you do want to play NFL preseason, my only advice to you is fractional units, 10th of a unit, 20th of a unit. Do not go big. Do not lose all your bankroll that you have for the upcoming season in the NFL preseason. That would be too bad. So we're talking today a little bit about college football futures. I will do one more video for NFL futures before the season kicks off, and then we're going to get right into the season. I want to preface this by saying we do not give out any official picks on futures here. We don't play futures. I've explained a little bit last year the reasoning behind that, but when you make future bets, and there's actually psychological studies on this, you start to see regular season games through the way that you predicted the preseason, because you want your preseason predictions and your future bets to hit. And the best way to go into regular season games, the best way to go into each week, is to essentially completely objectively look at that individual game without biasing your opinion based on previous opinions you had or previous outcomes. One of the reasons that we're successful at Bald Father Bets and that we win is a previous game's outcome has nothing to do with the next game's outcome. Football is very matchup oriented, and football is very coaching strategy oriented and things like that. Not to get too deep into the weeds on it, but that's one of the reasons why we don't do any official futures bets at Bald Father Bets. But with that being said, they are kind of fun to look at. So if you guys are someone who wants to throw down a futures bet, again, my advice to you, small units, little baby units. That way if it loses, who cares? If it wins, cool. That's a nice little extra bankroll. I bet $100, I won $5,000. Cool. But if you lose that $100, it isn't that big of a deal to you. Only real bet that we actually have in right now, we did another video a while back. We have Texas against Ohio State at +4, and the reason we gave it out back then is because of exactly what you've seen now. So that line has come down. That was to be expected. If it wasn't really for the whole nobody beats Ohio State in Columbus, Texas would probably be favored in this one. But I've looked. I do not remember a time when Ohio State was an underdog at home. If any of you guys do, please post it in the comments. I don't remember a time where Ohio State was an underdog at home. So in the 2000s era, I do not know of a time where they were an underdog in Columbus. So I don't think that they will be an underdog in Columbus. However, this line is going to, I think, continue to get closer to a pick, but you'll still always see Ohio State favored. And so why I said multiple books are now at Ohio State -2.5. The consensus right now seems to be -3. I believe if you still want to get Texas at +3.5, you can at Bet365. I think it's Bet365. You can still get Texas at +3.5, but any team in this game getting 4 points is just too hard to pass up on, which is why we took Texas +4. That one's already been given out. No other official picks given out for week 1 or week 0, anything like that yet. We will come at you guys closer to kickoff. You guys know I like putting it right up against the kickoff. Before I give out official picks, like to have all the amount of data that we can. But in multiple games that we're looking at in that week 0, we obviously, Iowa State, Kansas State, we'll have a pick for that week 0 game. We have to have a pick for the week 0 game, just, got to kick everything off. And then LSU, Clemson will be at you there. Miami, Notre Dame will be at you there. Syracuse, Tennessee, TCU, UNC, Alabama, Florida State, like we'll be on all the big ones, don't worry. Probably some surprising picks on that week 1, but we'll definitely be at you. So then, but looking at futures, there's 2 things I'm going to talk about: national title odds, and then if you want to put together a parlay of either conference title winners, or if you want to put together a parlay of maybe 5 teams or so that you think will make the playoffs. Again, little baby units, okay, if you guys are going to do this. So for national title winners, so my favorites, still my favorite, but one has come down significantly. I talked about it a little bit in a previous video. So I love Penn State. They're at plus 750 now. I think you could have got them at plus 850 before. So that's not a big change. There is really no reason that Penn State should be like that far behind, say, Texas or Ohio State in title odds. Just look at the formula of the previous 2 national champions, look at what Penn State's doing in terms of returning production, who they brought back, why they brought them back, all that stuff. Look at the impact it's having on their finances for the current recruiting class. There's a reason they don't have as much money to go all in on this recruiting class, and that's because of how much they spent to retain this team. Very similar to Ohio State, but Ohio State has a deeper bankroll, so it's not impacting them as much on the recruiting trail this year. Penn State is my preseason number 1. Doesn't mean that I think they'll win the national title, but at plus 750, again, we're not talking about what do you think's going to happen. We're talking about playing odds here. At plus 750, they're a very good bet. Now, my favorite national title bet was Clemson at plus 2,000, but that has come all the way down to Clemson at plus 1,000 because it was absurd that Clemson was at plus 2. I mean, Clemson is essentially like the exact same as Penn State in terms of what they bring back. They have coordinator continuity on offense like Penn State does. They bring in a new defensive coordinator like Penn State did that should have pretty big significant improvement over the previous. They have a potential round 1 pick 1 QB, Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik. I mean, they're very, very similar. Trust Clemson's wide receivers a lot more than I trust Penn State, and I trust Penn State's we'll call it defense, but mainly secondary, more than I trust Clemson's. But it's at plus 1,000. Like, that's a good futures bet to win the title. Again, for everyone who's going to lose their mind, that doesn't mean that I think Penn State or Clemson is going to win the national title. I'm just saying that those are the best odds in which to take. Going into last season and throughout the entire year, I told you guys Ohio State was going to win the national title. They won the national title, but they were not good preseason odds to make a bet on then. When you wanted to make the bet on Ohio State to win the national title, which we did, if you remember correctly, was the second that they lost to Michigan or the second that they lost to Oregon. We gave out those as little flyers on both occasions. Not official bets because we don't make futures bets, but we did tell you about them when they both happened. Okay, so that's it for national title odds. I wouldn't mess around with much more, to be honest. The list of teams that can win the national title is shorter than people think, that people make it out to be. It's list of teams that can make the playoffs is very, very different than can win the national title, especially the fact that you either have to win 3 or you have to win 4 games to win the national title. So there are not a lot of teams that can, and most of the teams that can don't have odds that are enticing enough to actually make the bet. Like Ohio State at plus 500, Texas at plus 550. That's not doing anything for us. It's just not. If you do want to take one of those teams, take whichever one you think is going to win that week 1 game. One team starts off 1-0, one team starts off 0-1. So if you bet on a team to win the national title and they don't make the playoffs, then you're kind of you're not going to win your bet. So starting off the season at 0-1 versus starting off the season at 1-0, just look at mathematically what that does to your ability to make the playoff. Now, if you were dead set that one of those 2 teams is going to make the playoff, as soon as they lose that game week 1, then bet them to make the playoff then. Okay. Conference title winners. So I think one of the things that's fun to do is put together a parlay of the 4 conference title winners. Usually you're going to get odds like $100 to win $3,000, $100 to win $5,000, $100 to win $2,700, $100 to win $4,000, just depending on who you pick. you're going to get really, really good odds there. Who should be in your parlay to win? Out of the Big Ten, the one Penn State's my favorite. In my opinion, like, it's almost impossible that Penn State isn't in Indy when you look at the way that their schedule lines up this year. They get Oregon at home for the whiteout game early in the season. Oregon's going to be breaking in multiple new players. I just don't see a world where Oregon pulls that one off. At night game in Happy Valley, whiteout, that's a very tough spot for Oregon. It's just a very, very tough spot. Then they travel to Columbus. Like, no, I probably don't think Penn State's going to win this year at Columbus, but it wouldn't matter, right? If they go 11-1. They only have one loss in the Big Ten. They're going to Indy. Like, you're not going to get two undefeated Big Ten teams. So I think they're in. I think they're the best shoe-in to get to Indy, which means they're the best. They should be then the best bet to win in Indy. If they get to Indy, if they have to play Penn State, if they have to play Oregon, if they have to play Michigan, if somehow they get lucky enough to play like Illinois or an Indiana or one of these maybe like lesser teams, I don't think there's any world where Penn State doesn't win those games. Just the style of play that Penn State will have, and then the way that they would match up against like a Michigan or an Oregon or one of those lesser teams like an Indiana or an Illinois. I just don't think there's any chance. If they have to play Ohio State for a second time, that's a little bit different. Ohio State would be able to match up against them a little bit better than those other schools. But again, do you think Ohio State's getting to Indy this year with the schedule that they have, and then maybe some of the easier schedules of some of the other Big Ten teams? Ohio State has an easy schedule too, especially compared to last year. There isn't really any Big Ten team outside of Wisconsin that has like a difficult schedule. They're all kind of easy. They all have like a few games that are tough, and the rest of it's kind of cake. So it's not. You're not going to have a lot of like 3-loss incredible Big Ten teams. The top of the Big Ten, just like they were last year, is going to be around that 2-loss or less. So you're kind of looking at then who do you think is going to make it? I think Penn State's a lock to make it to Indy. Then who do you think that second team is? If it's anyone other than Ohio State, they match up really well. And you're getting better odds on Penn State than you're getting on Ohio State to win the Big Ten. So that's why I like them if you're going to put them in the parlay. ACC, it's Clemson. We'll talk about Clemson a little bit more too in the conference in the parlay if you want to do that to make the playoff. I love Clemson. Like, I loved Clemson last year. I never wavered on Clemson last year, and ultimately Clemson won the ACC, just like I said they would at the beginning of the year. This year it's different. I think they could win the national title. I didn't really see that with Clemson last year. I thought they were going to win the ACC, and I thought they could win a playoff game. They just got a very difficult matchup, the first round against Texas. I don't see any other team winning the ACC. I don't think Miami's going to win the ACC. I don't think Georgia Tech's going to win the ACC. I don't think anyone's beating Clemson in the ACC, barring health. But if you're making a parlay, like, you're not trying to predict injuries. You just got to go off the knowledge that you have. Big 12, my two favorites are Utah and Texas Tech. I love Utah. I think not enough people are talking about Utah because of the way things went last year. But they had no answers at quarterback. They didn't even know who was going to be playing week to week. Kyle Whittingham is the most proven coach in the Big 12. He's in my top 5 head coaches in college football. He's earned the respect of, like, they're going to have a bounce back here. I like Texas. No one's going to argue with Texas Tech's roster. The thing that gives me pause about just saying Texas Tech and not Utah, I just don't know. When you build a team like that, when you build a team through money, and we'll see about the coaching staff. We'll just see. We'll just have to see. A transfer-built team is always a risk. They have a very good roster. I even like the kids that they brought in through the transfer portal. It's not like I think any of them are like bad apples or not team players or anything. It's just a risk anytime you build a team that way. So that's why I'm kind of either or on the Big 12 in terms of who I would put in. Some of those teams up at the top, when you're looking at an odds wise, I love Kansas State. and I love their coaching staff, but I don't necessarily like them in terms of odds. And you can be like, well, then why do you like Texas Tech? But Texas Tech, you could have got earlier at a little bit better, but they're now in that plus 500, plus 550 range. If you put Kansas State's roster next to Texas Tech's roster, and you look at them, there's no reason that Kansas State should be favored above Texas Tech to win the conference. So that's kind of what I'm thinking out there. Utah has snuck back up. I think some professional bettors saw that one earlier and were like, that's absurd. So those odds, you're not getting as good of odds on Utah, but they're still pretty good. If you were to pick another one in there, you're like, Adam, I don't really like Tech. I don't really like Utah. They're too high in the odds. Either like give me something that's really going to juice that parlay. Baylor or TCU are ones to look at. Those are two that you could look at for sure. And again, people can be like, why aren't you talking about Arizona State? This isn't about who I think is going to win the conference. This is about odds, and then looking at like their chances to win compared to what their odds are. That's what this is about. Arizona State absolutely could win the conference. Sam Leavitt could have a Heisman season and be the number 1 overall draft pick. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, just talking about valuing and maximizing odds. And then in the SEC, if you want to get crazy, the team to get crazy with is Florida. I don't think Florida is going to win the SEC. I think they could if everything went right for them. So then let's talk about not getting crazy, and let's talk about who the contenders are. I really don't think you should pick anyone other than chalk here. I don't think you should take anyone other than Georgia, Texas, or Alabama. And no, I don't include LSU as chalk. I think they're a step below. I think they're like, when you look at the SEC, I think 1, 2, and 3, however you want to rank 1, 2, and 3, separate themselves. And then I think you have a group of 4 that's up there next, where I think LSU kind of separates themselves from the rest in that 4. So LSU, Florida, A&M, and South Carolina. A&M there's a world too where they could get crazy and win this thing. They have so much offensive line talent. I think Elko will have the defense humming. So then it really comes down to what's the step that Marcel Reed takes. Is he more than just an athlete? Is he a quarterback? Remains to be seen. But I don't think anyone's going to actually win the conference in Atlanta other than Texas, Georgia, or Alabama. So take your pick of which one you like out of those, and then that's, I think, kind of your little conference parlay. Depending on what you put together there, you're going to bet 100. You're going to get anywhere between 2,500 and 5,000 back if your parlay hits. So fun, easy, and it's one of those ones where, again, only bet $100 on it. Like, you're not, when week 3 comes along and you're looking at the slate, if you want to bet one team, you're not going to bet the other team because you're like, well, that would mess up my preseason part. It's $100. Nobody cares. Okay. So, playoff odds. This is, I think, the most fun to do by far. Take like 5 teams, absolutely no more than 6. Honestly, I wouldn't go much more than 5 to be complete, but and parlay them all together to make the playoff. People are like, oh, I want to put in 8 teams. Well, you're not going to hit that because there's a reason you're getting astronomical odds, and it's very difficult to pick 8 out of 12 teams that are going to make the playoff. So let me talk about it, how you should build the parlay. Okay. There are 8 teams which are minus money to make the playoff, meaning that if you just took an individual bet on said team, you would have to bet, more money than you would get back in winning the bet. So we'll start at the top. Ohio State has come down. Ohio State was at minus 500. They're now around minus 400 at most books. Still wouldn't do it. Again, that doesn't mean I don't think Ohio State will make the playoff. I do think Ohio State will make the playoff. It is not worth it to put in those odds. There's a world where Ohio State goes 9-3 and misses the playoff. They play Texas week 1. They have Penn State, who a lot of people have as the preseason number 1 team. They play at Michigan, who they haven't been able to beat for the past 4 seasons. Maybe Underwood's incredible. There's a world where Ohio State could drop 3 games. And at minus 400 odds, they don't do anything for the parlay for you to throw them in there. So take them out. Penn State has now gone to minus 350 at a lot of places. I think they're a lock to make the playoff. But I will say, minus 350 is not like Texas was at minus 350, and I was telling people, do not put Texas in, because the same thing I just said about Ohio State. At minus 350, you probably shouldn't put Penn State in there either. I hate that, because again, that was like they were at like minus 200 before, and I was like, that's a lock. That's a check mark. They're an auto put into the parlay. So now you're getting down into where it starts to make more sense. So you got like Oregon, Georgia, they're around minus 250. Clemson, Bama, Notre Dame, that's 8. Yeah, Clemson, Bama, Notre Dame. So Clemson is my one out of that minus group that is an auto. They were at like minus 175. They're up to like minus 200. They should be automatically added to the parlay. And then between Bama and Georgia, I would add whichever one you like more. There's not necessarily a wrong answer there. There's reasons why you would like Georgia more, and there's reasons why you would like Alabama more. You probably trust the coaching staff at Georgia a bit more. Alabama has a more talented roster coming into the season, so you should pick one of those in there. Oregon at around minus 250. They have such a cake schedule that it's again you like these top Big Ten teams are gonna have good records because the middle and the end and the bottom, like the Big Ten is so weak. So it's just they have such a cake schedule. Oregon's probably not a bad one to throw in there either. If I'm being honest now, if you're looking at Penn State at minus 350 versus Oregon at minus 250, I hate to say this, but Oregon at minus 250 is the better one to put in the parlay. Like there shouldn't be a 100 difference between just making the playoff, not winning the Big Ten, not winning the national title, anything like that, just making the playoff between Penn State and Oregon like that. Like, yes, Penn State will probably beat Oregon in Happy Valley, but Oregon doesn't have to play at Ohio State. Penn State does. So this is you're just looking at odds here, and you should put in Oregon over Penn State. Again, I hate to say it, but yeah. I don't like Notre Dame. They have some trickier games this year. They don't play a conference championship game, so they don't get the benefit of the doubt of that extra chance to get in, that guaranteed spot. Doesn't mean I don't think they're going to make it. It's just you're looking at like minus 200 around for Notre Dame to get in. They got games against Miami. They got games against USC. They got games against Notre Dame. I don't love it. I don't love it. I would leave Notre Dame out. Then you have a bunch of teams that are in that plus 100 to plus 200 range. So your first teams where if you were to make an individual bet, you're getting plus money. I hate all of them. Don't put any of them in there. I think you got like LSU, Ole Miss, Miami. I think Boise State's in there. I think Michigan is in there at like plus 200. I think A&M is right around there at plus 200. None of them, this is the way I describe it. So I'm going to give you guys some teams then that in the next round that I think like is the one that really boosts your odds, right? They're the ones that you throw this one into the parlay because that's what makes this thing a 100 to win $5,000, 100 to win $4,000, 100 to win $3,000, depending on how you scheduled the ones at the top. And the difference between like, do I think that one team is this much more ahead of the other team to make the playoffs? The answer is no. So I'm going to give you the example of this. I think Michigan's right around plus 200. USC is right around plus 500. They both play in the Big Ten. There is absolutely no world where you can convince me that Michigan has double the chances of USC to make the playoff in the upcoming year. They do not. They do not. You can tell me Michigan will make the playoff, USC doesn't. We can argue that all day long. That is a completely separate topic. Should the odds be Michigan plus 200 and USC plus 500? Absolutely not. Here's the next one I'll give you in the conference. Should the odds be, I think LSU's around plus 125. I think Ole Miss is plus 150, plus 170, plus 175. I think you can get them all the way up to like plus 180 at some sites. Should they be at that level and Florida be at plus 400? Absolutely not. Preseason talent-wise, Florida's stronger than Ole Miss. I wouldn't say they're stronger than LSU, but they're stronger than Ole Miss. Yes, they have a much more difficult schedule, but we're talking again about odds. It's not about who I think is going to make the playoff. What gives you the value in which could happen in a realistic scenario? So I don't like any of those teams at like the plus 100 to plus 200 range, because you're not getting enough bang for your buck on those. So then you're going to have some of the anywhere between like plus 200 and plus 400. I don't really love any of them. The one that I think, if you want to mess around with it, is Tennessee at plus 300, because they once again play one of the easiest schedules in the SEC, and that's how they were able to get into the playoff last year at 10-2. The drop-off they will have at quarterback is not what is all that that's not what they have. A weakness at offensive line that should worry people. The drop-off at quarterback isn't really the thing. Heupel wants to run the ball until you just can't handle it anymore, and you either quit or you overcommit on defense to stop it. It's going to be difficult for him to do that under his current situation, because there's just a lack of overall depth on the offensive line for them. There just is. So Tennessee, if you want to put one into that plus 200 to plus 400 range, Tennessee is my pick. I don't really like any of the others. SMU isn't the worst thing ever. I think they're close to plus 400. You have to remember, again, this upcoming college football selection committee, they changed the criteria, and strength of schedule is counted more for, and there's been multiple reports from insiders that essentially have had it told to them point blank, if we were doing last year's selection under this year's rules, Alabama would have made it, not a SMU. So you need to be thinking about that if you're taking any of these teams that are not playing in the SEC or the Big Ten. Big Ten too, if you're looking at a team like Indiana, thinking that if they went 10-2, they're a shoo-in. They're not under the new rules. So honestly, if you're looking at a team that plays in any other conference other than the SEC, you need to be taking that into account when you're in terms of who you're picking. So then let's go to the moneymakers. So the team that you throw into the parlay that really boosts that one up. My favorites, I have three that are my favorite. I'll give you the ones that I don't like at all. But my favorites are three. Florida at plus 400. Again, with the strength of schedule of Florida can go 9-3, and there's a very good chance they make the playoff. USC at plus 500. Just look at history of teams who lose that many one-loss games, return that production talent-wise, all that stuff. Mavia starts the season as the starting quarterback, so he worked through all the camp with what he has returning at receiver. D'Anton Lynn in his second year. Look at coordinator changes we think are all sexy the first year that they're in there, but really it's the second year where a coordinator change makes a big difference. I think they'll be much improved on defense. I think they'll be improved on offense. I like USC. They do play a little bit more of a difficult schedule. All the West Coast teams have to manage their travel out east in the Big Ten, but love USC. And then Georgia Tech at plus 550. I think there's a really good chance that a 10-2 Georgia Tech would get in, depending on who their two losses were and who they beat. But especially if Georgia Tech's at 10-2 and they go to Charlotte, and they're already in, I don't think they punish them for losing to Clemson. I just don't. So those are the three that I love. The ones that I wouldn't touch. I wouldn't touch Indiana at plus 500. And Illinois was at plus 550 or plus 600. They've come way down because people were Illinois, there's no chance. Illinois is not making the playoff, and I don't think Indiana's making the playoff. I'd keep them as far away from your parlay as possible. People have been asking me about Auburn. I don't think the odds are there. I've seen them anywhere between 400 and 450. I just don't think the odds are where you want them to be for them. Yes, Hugh Freeze does crazy things. Yes, at 9-3 Auburn, maybe 10-2, or excuse me, a 10-2, maybe 9-3 Auburn makes the playoffs. I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do that one. So that's it in terms of college football futures. We will be back at you with the same thing, but regarding NFL. We look at Super Bowl, we'll look at conference, we'll look at division winners, make the playoffs, not make the playoffs, things like that. Some nuggets in there, some interesting things you'll like. For example, the Philadelphia Eagles are not who I would pick to win the NFC East. No one's won that division back-to-back. It's in like 20 years or something. I think it just sets up a little bit different. So there'll be some good things in there. Again, we don't give out futures bets. The only official bet we've given out so far this year is Texas +4 against Ohio State. But these are just fun things that you can play around with if you so choose to do. But anyway, cannot wait to come back at you guys once the season actually starts. We're so close. It's July 20th. We're so close. So it'll be here before we know it. In like 3 days, I think we're 1 month away from, because August 23rd is when the season kicks off. So in 3 days, we are officially 1 month away from football season. But anyway, hope you guys are enjoying the summer. Make sure you get all your girlfriend chores, your wife chores, all that stuff done before football season kicks off. So that way you can say, honey, if you like these vacations that I've been paying for by listening to Vault Father Bets, then you got to let me watch these games, okay? So anyway, make sure you get all that stuff done, and we'll be back at you. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Give the channel a subscribe, give the video a like, all that stuff. We'll get more into that as the year goes on, but never ask you guys to pay for these picks. Just want to keep growing the channel and grow the community. Have a good one. Bye.